Hey guys, tonight we're taking a quiet step back into the long, slow world of the Silk Road. Not the dramatic battles or the famous diplomats, but the ordinary, everyday mechanisms that kept this vast trade route moving. Before the caravans reached the great markets of Samarkand or Kashgar, before species and silk change hands, thousands of small, practical tasks unfold in steady rhythm across mountains, deserts, and steppe. Along the rim of the Taklamakan Desert, the wind pushes fine dust across narrow tracks used for centuries. In the Pamir Highlands, thin air slows every movement, and caravans adjust their pace to the altitude. And across the open steppe, long shadows stretch behind lines of camels walking in quiet formation. These landscapes form the backdrop for the logistics that sustain one of the most influential trade systems in world history. What makes the Silk Road function is not a single route, but countless routines, weighing goods, loading animals, securing water supplies, maintaining caravans, navigating terrain, and resting in caravanserais. Spaced at predictable intervals, every object that travels, whether a bolt of silk, a bag of pepper, or a block of jade, depends on these slow, deliberate processes. They define the rhythm of travel far more than any moment of diplomacy or conflict. Tonight, we will walk through this system with calm, steady focus. We will look at how caravans are assembled, how goods are packed, how animals are cared for, how distances are measured, and how merchants manage days that begin before sunrise and end long after dusk. It's a story of logistics, repetition, and quiet resilience. The kind of history that unfolds, not in sudden events, but in thousands of practical actions, carried out day after day. If you enjoy gentle, atmospheric history, told in a slow, BBC-style tone, feel free to subscribe. It helps support more calm videos like this. The Silk Road begins not as a single path, but as a collection of landscapes shaped by wind, water, and time. These landscapes determine how people move, how long journeys take, and what preparations a caravan must make before setting out. Each environment adds its own quiet demands, forming a network of routes that shift with seasons, weather, and political stability. Along the eastern edges of Central Asia, the Taklamakan Desert stretches for hundreds of kilometers. Its dunes move gradually under steady winds, creating ridges that rise and fall like frozen waves. Travelers avoid the central region, where shifting sands make orientation difficult. Instead, they pass along the northern and southern rims, staying close to oases, fed by rivers descending from surrounding mountains. These oases Kotan, Kashgar, Kuka, Terpam provide water and rest stations at intervals that determine the pace of travel. North of the desert, the Tian Shan Mountains form a barrier of snow-covered peaks. Passes between them open only during warmer months. At high elevations, air thins, temperatures drop sharply at night, and trails narrow along steep slopes. Caravans crossing these passes must adjust loads, shorten daily distances, and plan carefully for sudden storms. The mountains offer protection from extreme heat, but they add challenges of altitude and terrain. To the west, the Pamir Highlands rise in broad plateaus. These uplands, sometimes called the roof of the world, require slow movement. The thin air limits the speed of animals and handlers alike. Rivers carved by melting snow cut through valleys, creating natural corridors that guide travelers toward regions farther west. These routes connect to Central Asian plains, where grasslands extend for long distances, offering better pastures for animals and smoother ground for travel. South of the Taklamakan, another series of mountain ranges forms a boundary between Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent. Here, narrow valleys and steep passes lead toward northern India. These routes handle less silk traffic than the northern corridors, but still function as vital links, especially for goods such as spices, cotton textiles, and precious stones. Farther west, the Iranian plateau becomes a central crossroads. Its plains and basins support towns, caravanserais, and long-distance trade hubs. The climate varies from region to region. Some areas experience harsh winters, others intense summer heat. Merchants accustomed to one environment must adapt quickly as routes shift between deserts, plateaus, and mountains. Across all these landscapes, water determines everything. Wells, rivers, and seasonal streams dictate where caravans can stop. Where routes diverge, and how many animals can travel at once. The presence of water turns a barren plain into a viable resting point. Its absence forces travelers to stretch distances and ration supplies carefully. Over centuries, knowledge of these water sources becomes part of the shared understanding that binds Silk Road communities together. The geography of the Silk Road is not static. Riverbeds change course, dunes shift, and mountain passes open or close, depending on snowfall. Political borders also influence which routes are safe. When regions stabilize, merchants take shorter, more efficient paths. When conflicts arise, caravans divert to longer, safer alternatives. The road is shaped as much by natural conditions as by human decisions. Despite these variables, the key corridors remain consistent over long periods. Travelers follow the same river valleys, skirt the same deserts, and cross the same passes generation after generation. Their movement creates a rhythm defined not by speed but by endurance, repetition, and respect for the environment. The geography does not rush the traveler. It sets a patient pace that shapes every logistical choice that follows. A Silk Road caravan is not a single group of travelers moving in unison, but a carefully organized system of people and animals, each performing specific tasks that allow the journey to continue day after day. The composition varies depending on distance, season, and destination, yet the overall structure remains recognizable across centuries. At the center of every caravan stands the camel. In the deserts and plains of Central Asia, the Bactrian camel, with its 2 large humps and thick coat, becomes the main transport animal. Its strength allows it to carry heavy loads for long distances, and its broad feet help it walk across sand without sinking. Camels tolerate cold nights in the mountains and dry heat in the lowlands. Their ability to travel for long periods with limited water makes them especially valuable in regions where wells are far apart. A medium-sized caravan may include several dozen camels. Large caravans can contain hundreds. Each camel carries bundles, tied with ropes and balanced carefully on both sides. Handlers walk beside them, adjusting ropes, checking saddles, and guiding the animals with steady, rhythmic calls. These handlers know the temperament of each camel and understand how much weight it can carry, how fast it should move, and when it needs rest. Alongside the handlers, merchants travel with their goods. Some merchants own only a few animals. Others manage large shipments of silk, spices, metalware, or glass. Their responsibilities include keeping inventories, negotiating with local officials, and arranging lodging at caravans. Although merchants share the same route, each one follows a distinct business plan shaped by local markets and distant demand. Caravans also require guards. Their role is not dramatic or constant, but steady. They watch the horizon for signs of bandits, protect the camp at night, and guide the group through areas where political tensions may rise. In many regions, local authorities require caravans to hire official escorts before crossing borders or entering mountain passes. These guards are familiar with local conditions, helping travelers avoid routes made unsafe by weather or conflict. In addition to handlers, merchants, and guards, caravans include support workers who manage tasks that appear small but are essential for long-distance travel. Water carriers collect and store water in leather skins. Cooks prepare meals using dried grain, meat, and tea. Repairers fix broken straps, crates, and tools. Without these workers, caravans could not maintain a steady rhythm across weeks or months of travel. Guides play a central role. Their knowledge of specific routes, wells, oases, and seasonal conditions allows caravans to plan daily distances. Guides know where dunes shift dangerously, where rockfalls occur in passes, and which sections of steppe have reliable pastures. Their understanding of the terrain is passed down through generations, forming part of the collective memory of Silk Road communities. Some caravans travel with interpreters, as the route passes through regions speaking Turkic, Iranian, Chinese, Sogdian, and Indorian languages. Communication becomes necessary for trade and negotiation. Interpreters help merchants exchange information, settle disputes, and understand local customs. There are also animals other than camels. In some regions, horses and mules carry lighter loads, or serve as riding animals for scouts and messengers. Donkeys appear more frequently in shorter regional routes. In mountainous terrain, sure-footed mules or yaks may replace camels, which struggle on narrow paths or steep inclines. The animal composition of a caravan shifts depending on the environment ahead. Caravan leadership varies from group to group. Some caravans operate under the direction of a merchant with long experience. Others rely on a chief handler who understands animal management and terrain. Leadership includes decisions about when to rest, how to distribute supplies, and which path to take when multiple options appear. Although caravans differ in size and purpose, they share a common structure built on routine. Each person understands their role. Each animal follows a familiar pattern, and each object in the caravan, from ropes to food bags, must be positioned correctly. This organization allows the entire group to move as a single system through landscapes that demand patience and discipline. A caravan is not defined by speed, but by endurance. Its composition reflects this goal: a balance of labor, knowledge, strength, and planning. Every successful journey depends on these quiet, coordinated efforts. Before a caravan takes its first steps along the Silk Road, merchants and handlers must complete one of the most important everyday tasks: packing. The movement of goods across thousands of kilometers depends not only on strong animals and reliable guides, but also on how each load is arranged, weighed, and secured. This process is slow, deliberate, and deeply practical. Packing begins with sorting. Goods arrive in bundles, crates, jars, or woven bags, each designed to protect its contents. Silk is rolled tightly and wrapped in cloth to shield it from dust. Spices are stored in sealed containers to preserve their aroma. Metal objects are cushioned with straw or textiles to prevent friction during travel. Fragile items, such as glassware, are packed with layers of padding and positioned near the center of a camel's load, where movement is more stable. Each type of good has a particular weight, shape, and sensitivity to climate. Handlers examine every bundle and determine whether it must remain dry, avoid heat, or stay protected from sudden movement. These assessments influence where each item is placed in the overall load. A camel can carry substantial weight, often between 150 and 200 kilos, but the exact amount depends on the terrain and length of the journey. Handlers do not load camels to their maximum capacity unless necessary. Instead, they aim for balance. A camel moves best when weight on both sides is equal. Uneven loads strain joints, slow movement, and increase the risk of injury. To achieve balance, handlers use simple tools: suspended scales, stones of known weight, and their own practiced judgment. Ropes made from wool, leather, or plant fiber secure the loads. The technique for tying them varies by region, but the principle is the same. Straps cross over the bundles, loop beneath the saddle frame, and tighten with knots designed for quick adjustments. These knots allow handlers to loosen or tighten the ropes during rest stops as the camel shifts. Asbagsetli, or ashumidity, changes the tension of the fibers. Packing is a communal activity. Several handlers work together, lifting heavy bundles and checking each other's knots. They examine how the load rests on the camel's sides, ensuring that nothing rubs or presses against sensitive areas. Even a small misplacement can lead to sores, which force the animal to slow down or stop entirely. Because a halted camel affects the entire caravan, handlers prioritize careful load placement above speed. Certain items are positioned to be accessible during travel. Water skins hang where handlers can reach them quickly. Tools for minor repairs, knives, needle sets, spare rope, are tied near the top of packs. Food for the caravan is divided so that each day's portion can be retrieved without disturbing the main load. These practical decisions save time later, reducing the need to repack during short breaks. Some caravans transport goods on behalf of multiple merchants. In these cases, bundles are labeled with marks, colors, or symbols identifying ownership. This system prevents confusion when the caravan reaches a checkpoint or border station where goods must be declared. It also allows merchants to separate their shipments efficiently upon arrival in major markets. Once packing's complete, handlers lead each camel a short distance to observe how the load settles. If a bundle shifts noticeably, the ropes are adjusted. If a camel moves unevenly, the weight is redistributed. This testing phase ensures that every animal begins the journey in a condition that supports steady, uninterrupted travel. The arrangement of animals also depends on their loads. Heavier loads are placed in the middle of the caravan, where movement is more controlled. Camels carrying lighter or more fragile goods may walk at the front or rear, where handlers can monitor them more easily. Some caravans place animals with complex loads near experienced handlers who can recognize subtle signs of discomfort or imbalance. Packing also reflects the rhythm of long-distance travel, because caravans stop at intervals to rest and resupply. Goods must be positioned so that essential items can be removed without disturbing the entire load. Grain for animals, food for travelers, and water skins are packed near the top, while less urgent goods remain deeper in the stack. In regions where climate changes rapidly, from cold mountain passes to hot desert plains, packing must account for temperature. Items sensitive to heat are wrapped in layers and positioned away from direct sunlight. Goods damaged by cold, such as certain oils, may be placed closer to the camel's body for insulation. Throughout the journey, packing is not a one-time task, but a continuous process. At the end of each day, handlers inspect the loads, tightening knots and adjusting weights. If a camel grows tired, its load is redistributed among others. If goods settle or shift, bundles are retied before dawn. This routine reinforces the importance of logistics, the slow, careful work that makes swift travel possible. On the Silk Road, the success of a caravan depends not only on distant markets or long horizons, but also on the quiet, steady task of arranging objects so they can endure the journey ahead. Packing, simple in appearance, becomes one of the most essential skills along the entire route. The caravan on the Silk Road moves according to a rhythm shaped by climate, terrain, and the needs of animals and people. This rhythm is steady rather than fast. It allows the caravan to cover long distances without exhausting its resources. Each day follows a pattern that repeats with small variations depending on the environment through which the travelers pass. The day begins before sunrise. In the dim light, handlers move quietly among the camels, checking ropes, clearing overnight frosts from saddles in cold regions, and inspecting the animals' legs and feet. Camels rise slowly, stretching their long necks and shifting their weight before standing. The cool air of early morning is the most efficient time for travel. Winds are calm, temperatures are low, and visibility increases gradually as the sky brightens. Breakfast for the caravan is simple, often tea, dried grain, or flatbread prepared the night before. While travelers eat, guides discuss the day's route, how many wells lie ahead, where the next rest point is located, and how the terrain may change. These decisions determine how fast the caravan will move and how long each segment of the journey will last. The caravan sets out when the first sunlight touches the edges of the landscape. Camels walk in single or double file, following a route known through generations. The pace is calm and deliberate. On flat ground, a caravan may travel 4 to 5 kilometers an hour. In mountains or dunes, much less. Movement is steady rather than strenuous. The aim is endurance across weeks or months, not speed within a single day. Handlers walk beside the camels, calling to them softly and adjusting ropes when necessary. Merchants travel on foot or horseback, keeping watch over their goods. Guards take positions at the front, middle, and rear, observing the horizon and the behavior of nearby travelers or herders. After several hours, the sun rises fully, and temperatures begin to climb. Depending on the region, caravans may take a short rest. In deserts, this break occurs before the heat becomes intense. In cooler climates, the morning stretch may continue longer. These rest stops allow camels to kneel, lighten their load briefly, and drink small amounts of water. Handlers check hooves, adjust pack straps, and observe how the loads have settled. By midday, when sunlight becomes strongest, the caravan often pauses for a longer break. In open plains or mountain valleys, travelers seek shade if available, perhaps near a rock outcrop, a group of shrubs, or a roadside structure. In desert regions, Save is rade, and the caravan simply rests in place. This pause protects both people and animals from heat stress. It also provides time to prepare simple meals and refill water skins. The afternoon segment of travel resumes when temperatures begin to fall. The pace is similar to the morning's, a quiet, continuous movement over terrain that can shift from open steppe to narrow paths, or from sandy tracks to stony ground. In some regions, afternoon breezes help cool the air, making travel more comfortable. In others, Windstorms or sudden weather changes can force the caravan to shorten its route as the sun lowers toward the horizon. The caravan prepares to stop. Campsites are chosen based on water availability, shelter, and safety. Wells, small streams, or caravanserais often mark these evening resting points. If no water is available, the caravan relies on its stored supply and chooses a flat area where animals can kneel and rest without difficulty. At camp, the quiet routine continues. Loads are removed, camels are allowed to graze if pasture exists, and animals are checked for signs of strain. Fires are lit for cooking, using dung or brushwood depending on the environment. Merchants review their goods, record notes, or discuss the next day's route with guides and guards. Nightfall brings a change in atmosphere. Temperatures drop quickly in deserts and mountains. Travelers wrap themselves in blankets or cloaks, and camels settle into clusters that provide warmth and protection. Guards maintain watch and shifts, especially in areas where bandit activity is known. The night is often calm, broken only by the sound of wind, the rustling of canvas, or the soft rumbling of camels. The daily rhythm reinforces the structure of long-distance trade. Each day includes movement, rest, assessment, and preparation for the following day. This repetition creates a steady flow that supports the caravan across vast distances. There is no sudden push, no dramatic rush, just the patient coordination of many small tasks. Success on the Silk Road depends on attention to this rhythm. It allows caravans to adapt to terrain, conserve resources, and maintain the well-being of their animals and people. The journey may take months, but each day's calm routine brings the caravan closer to its destination, one measured step at a time. For every caravan on the Silk Road, the most practical concern is not the destination but the daily need for water and food. Long-distance trade depends on the careful management of these supplies. Without predictable access to water for animals and people, or without reliable stores of grain and dried food, the best-prepared caravan cannot continue. Logistics begin and end with these essential resources. Water determines the route more than geography or politics. Along the northern and southern rims of the Taklamakan Desert, wells and oasis towns appear at intervals shaped by rivers descending from the mountains. These water sources are mapped carefully in the memory of guides who have traveled the routes many times. Some wells produce steady flow, yet others weaken during dry seasons and must be approached cautiously. Caravan leaders often send scouts ahead to assess the condition of a well before committing the whole group to a long stretch of travel. At oases, such as Terpenkuka or Dunwang, water appears in canals and natural springs. These stops allow caravans to refill all containers, leather skins for drinking water, clay jars for longer storage, and larger animal skin bags that hang from packs. The process is slow. Water must be filtered when sediment collects at the bottom of wells, and in some regions, the taste reflects the minerals present in the soil. Food for the caravan follows similar patterns of planning. Travelers bring staples that withstand long journeys: dried grain, barley flour, hard bread, and sometimes dried meat or cheese, depending on the region. These foods are simple, light, and predictable. Grain can be mixed with water to form a porridge. Flour can be baked quickly on hot stones. Tea appears in later periods as a regular drink among Central Asian caravans, valued for warmth and ease of preparation. Camels require their own supplies, though far less than horses or mules. Bactrian camels can travel long distances without frequent watering, but they still need access to water every few days, depending on temperature and terrain. Their diet consists mainly of coarse vegetation, dry grasses, thorny shrubs, or whatever limited pasture exists near wells and oases. In barren regions, caravans carry bags of grain or fodder to supplement natural forage. These supplies add weight, but ensure that the animals remain strong enough to continue. The organization of supplies reflects the rhythm of the route. Before entering a long dry stretch such as the path between certain oasis towns along the southern Taklamakan caravans spend several hours preparing. All water skins are filled, food is portioned for predictable days, and handlers check that camels are rested. This preparation reduces the risk of shortages that could slow the group or force it to turn back. In mountain regions, temperatures influence how food is stored. Cold nights help preserve supplies, but sudden storms can interrupt cooking. Travelers adjust their meals accordingly, relying on foods that require little preparation or fuel. Firewood is scarce in many highland areas. Dung collected from camels is often used as fuel, especially in open plains, where vegetation is limited. Food and water for guards and handlers are distributed regularly. Meals are simple and shared. Grain is cooked into porridge. Bread is warmed on embers. Dried meat is softened in boiling water. These foods do not vary much from day to day, but their reliability supports the consistency of travel. The predictability of meals helps maintain the slow, steady routine that caravans depend on. Merchants monitor supplies throughout the journey. They calculate how many days remain before the next oasis, whether the caravan should reduce its pace, and how much water must be conserved. Sudden heat, unexpected headwinds, or an injured animal can increase consumption. Adjustments are made quietly and practically, without disrupting the larger structure of travel. Water storage techniques also reflect centuries of experience. Leather skins remain flexible in desert climates, but must be checked for leaks. Clay jars protect water from heat, but add weight. In some regions, travelers bury jars of water ahead of time, small caches prepared during earlier journeys. These hidden stores provide safety in stretches where wells are uncertain. For the animals, water management is a balance between need and endurance. A camel may drink a large volume at once, storing moisture for the next several days. Handlers allow this whenever water is abundant. In dry areas, drinking is rationed more carefully. Camels kneel beside wells or troughs, drinking calmly while handlers wait and observe. Their condition determines how far the caravan can travel the next day. Every decision about water and food influences the next stage of the journey. The distance a caravan can cover, the number of animals it can support, and the pace it can maintain all depend on these fundamental resources. Logistics along the Silk Road are built on this steady, practical foundation. Across deserts, plateaus, and mountains, water and food remain constant. Essential tasks that shape the movement of people and goods across thousands of kilometers. Movement along the Silk Road depends on understanding the terrain. Caravans do not travel in straight lines. They follow paths shaped by wind, rock, temperature, and the limitations of the animals themselves. Each region presents its own quiet difficulties, and the success of a journey rests on the ability of guides and handlers to read the land with steady attention. In desert regions, navigation begins with the sand itself. The Taklamakan Desert, with its tall dunes and shifting ridges, requires caution. The central areas are avoided because dunes move unpredictably under strong winds. Caravans travel along the edges, where the ground is more stable and where occasional shrubs or dry riverbeds provide reference points. Guides study the patterns of ripples across the sand, the direction of wind-blown trails, and the color of distant ridges. These details, small but reliable, help orient the caravan even when landmarks are scarce. In rocky deserts, the texture of the ground changes. Here, stones and gravel form wide plains that appear easy to cross but can strain animals' feet. Handlers watch for sharp stones that cut hooves or loosen loads. Paths worn by earlier travelers often provide smoother ground, even in open areas. Guides know where the terrain dips gently, where water once flowed, and where the earth becomes too soft after rare rainfall. Mountain regions demand a different pace. In the Tian Shan or Pamir ranges, trails narrow sharply along cliffs or ascend gradually through high passes. The air becomes thin, and cold winds rise in the afternoon. Caravans climb slowly, allowing animals to adjust. Handlers shorten daily distances and rest more often. Snow and ice remain on northern slopes well into warmer months, and sudden weather shifts can close a pass unexpectedly. Guides choose routes that offer shelter, natural overhangs, wide ledges, or sheltered valleys where caravans can wait safely until conditions improve. Watercourses provide natural corridors through many mountainous regions. Rivers carve valleys that become reliable passageways, though these paths may narrow where the river bends against the rock. In Such places, caravans travel single file, listening to the constant sound of water against stone. River valleys also offer occasional pastures, giving animals a chance to eat after long stretches of bare ground. In steppe zones, navigation relies on open visibility. Grasslands seem uniform at first glance, but experienced guides note subtle differences. The height of grass, the presence of salt patches left by dried lakes, and the patterns of animal trails. These signs point to water sources or warn of areas with poor grazing. The steady wind of the steppe also influences travel. Caravans adjust their formation to reduce strain on animals when facing headwinds or cross. The seasons affect navigation profoundly. In summer, desert heat limits travel to mornings and evenings. In winter, snow closes high mountain passes and makes certain valleys impassable. Spring brings melting snow, swelling rivers, and muddy plains that slow movement. Autumn offers some of the most favorable conditions, with cooler temperatures and stable paths. Caravans often time their long journeys to begin or end during these months. Political conditions also shape navigation. When conflicts arise between regional powers, certain routes become unsafe. Caravans shift to alternate paths that avoid contested areas. These diversions may add days or weeks to the journey, but they protect merchants, animals, and goods. Over time, new routes emerge as old ones fall out of use, reflecting both natural and social changes along the Silk Road. Markers along routes help travelers maintain direction. In some areas, piles of stones mark safe paths or signal tones. In others, travelers follow the remains of ancient walls, watchtowers, or beacon posts that once formed communication networks. Even ruins become useful guides, their silhouettes against the landscape indicating stretches of the road that earlier caravans traveled. The pace of navigating harsh terrain remains consistent, slow, observant, deliberate. Guides listen to the sound of sand underfoot, watch for signs of shifting weather, and adjust course when the terrain ahead appears unstable. Handlers respond quietly, leading camels around obstacles and redistributing weight if an animal struggles. Each landscape requires its own form of knowledge. Desert guides learn the patterns of wind. Mountain guides learn the behavior of snow. Steppe guides learn the movement of herds and the signs of distant water. This knowledge, preserved through generations, allows caravans to cross regions that would otherwise be impassable. Navigating harsh terrain is not dramatic. It is a patient act, shaped by experience and careful observation. Through deserts, mountains, and plains, this steady attention ensures that goods continue moving along the Silk Road, step by step across some of the most challenging landscapes in the world. Along the vast distances of the Silk Road, caravans depend not only on their own supplies and routines, but also on a network of structures built specifically to support long-distance travel. These structures, caravanserais, way stations, fortified inns, and simple rest stops form the quiet infrastructure of the route. Without them, reliable trade across deserts, mountains, and plains would not be possible. Their purpose is practical: to provide water, shelter, safety, and predictability in an environment where conditions often shift unexpectedly. A caravanserai is typically a rectangular or square complex built around an open courtyard. Thick walls made of stone, brick, or packed earth surround the entire structure, offering protection from wind, sandstorms, and potential raids. The entrance is usually a single fortified gate, wide enough for loaded camels to pass through, but narrow enough to control movement. Guards or attendants stationed at the gate monitor who enters and leaves, ensuring that the space remains orderly and safe. Inside, the courtyard serves as the central working area. Here, caravans unload goods, allow camels to kneel and rest, and prepare meals. The open design provides ventilation in hot climates and enough space to organize animals without obstructing pathways. In colder regions or at higher elevations, the courtyard may include partial roofing or arcades that offer additional shelter from snow and wind. Surrounding the courtyard are rows of small rooms. These rooms serve multiple functions. Some provide sleeping quarters for merchants and handlers, others store goods temporarily, and a few may be used for administrative tasks, such as recording customs duties or verifying transit documents. The rooms are simple but sturdy, with thick walls that help maintain more stable temperatures throughout the night. Water is the central feature of every car. A well or cistern sits either in the courtyard or in an adjoining chamber. In arid regions, water collection systems are built to capture and store rainwater or runoff from nearby hills. The presence of a reliable well often determines the placement of the building itself. Caravans plan their routes to move from one water source to the next, making these stations predictable anchors in an otherwise shifting landscape. Some caravanserais include stables or animal shelters, especially in regions where harsh weather requires enclosed protection. These shelters provide shade in summer and warmth in winter, reducing the risk of illness or injury to animals that must travel long distances. Feeding troughs, storage bins for fodder, and platforms for repairing saddles or packs are common features. In addition to physical infrastructure, caravanserais function as points of exchange. Traders arriving from different regions meet here, sharing information about routes, weather conditions, market prices, and political developments. This steady flow of knowledge helps merchants plan their next stages and avoid unsafe areas. Because caravanserais serve travelers from many backgrounds, Turkic, Persian, Sogdian, Chinese, Indian, they become quiet hubs of multilingual communication. Some caravanserais are administered by local authorities who collect taxes or fees. These payments help maintain the building, provide water, and support attendants who handle daily operations. In return, travelers receive access to shelter, rest areas, and in some cases, basic meals. Other stations are supported by charitable endowments or religious institutions. In these places, lodging and food may be provided without cost as part of a tradition of hospitality. In mountainous regions, rest stations take different forms. Instead of large enclosed structures, travelers may rely on fortified shelters built near strategic passes or river crossings. These shelters offer protection from sudden storms and allow caravans to wait safely until snow or wind subsides. Their walls are thick, and their roofs are low to withstand strong winds. Though smaller and more Spartan than the large caravanserais of the plains, these mountain shelters serve an equally important purpose. In desert areas, some stations consist of little more than a walled enclosure with a well. These enclosures, often circular or rectangular, protect travelers and animals from sandstorms and allow for safe overnight rest. They may not provide permanent rooms, but their walls create a vital barrier against the elements. The presence of a reliable well, even in a rudimentary enclosure, greatly increases the safety of crossing harsh regions. Caravanserais also play a role in maintaining trade stability, because they appear at regular intervals, often spaced a day. As journey apart, travelers can estimate how far they must go before reaching shelter. This predictability helps caravans plan water consumption, food portions, and animal endurance. The spaced intervals also reflect the rhythms of long-distance travel, the distance a caravan can realistically cover between sunset and the next afternoon. As trade expands across the Silk Road, these structures multiply. From Persia to Central Asia, from the Iranian plateau to the western edges of China, builders adapt designs to local climates. In some regions, caravanserais are large and elaborate, with decorative elements indicating the patronage of kings or wealthy merchants. In others, they remain functional and plain, shaped only by the immediate needs of travelers. Although many caravanserais now stand in ruins eroded by wind, sand, or time, their foundations and surviving walls reveal standard patterns. The symmetry of rooms, the thickness of stones, the orientation of gates, and the placement of wells all point to shared architectural principles developed over centuries. These structures embody a quiet form of engineering focused on endurance rather than style. Life inside a caravanserai follows a calm routine. Travelers arrive before sunset, unload goods, water their animals, and eat a simple meal. Some gather briefly to exchange news, while others retire to their rooms. As night falls, the courtyard grows quiet. Guards close the gate, and the building becomes a self-contained world of resting camels, dim lanterns, and low voices. At dawn, the process reverses. Loads are secured, animals rise, and the caravan resumes its journey along the next stretch of road. The existence of caravanserais transforms the Silk Road from a series of difficult paths into a connected network of manageable stages. They make long-distance trade predictable, safer, and more sustainable. Their walls mark the points where journeys pause, where merchants reorganize, and where the movement of goods across continents becomes not only possible but routine. Every caravan traveling along the Silk Road moves according to the quiet but unwavering rules of the natural world. Weather patterns, seasonal changes, and environmental hazards shape almost every logistical decision. Unlike military campaigns or urban trade, where human schedules dominate, Silk Road travel follows patterns set by wind, heat, cold, snow, and daylight. These elements do not show urgency, but their influence is constant. They define when caravans depart, where they rest, how far they travel, and which routes they choose. In desert regions, temperature stands as the most influential factor. The Taklamakan and Gobi deserts experience some of the most extreme daily variations in Central Asia. During summer months, daytime temperatures rise to levels that strain both travelers and animals. The heat reflects off pale sand, creating shimmering surfaces that distort distance and direction. In these conditions, caravans travel mostly during the cooler hours, early morning, late afternoon, or even part of the night. The morning segment becomes especially important because winds are still, visibility is growing, and the air has not yet warmed to uncomfortable levels. Winter introduces the opposite challenge. Nighttime temperatures in the same regions fall sharply below freezing. Sand becomes stiff under frost, and the wind carries fine particles that can sting exposed skin. Camels adapt well to cold, but handlers must protect their hands, faces, and feet. The daily rhythm slows, and caravans shorten their distances to prevent exhaustion. Although winter reduces the risk of heat stroke, it adds concerns about frostbite, frozen water containers, and brittle rope fibers that tighten or crack in low temperatures. In the steppe regions of Central Asia, wind dominates the landscape. Strong, sweeping winds travel across open plains with little obstruction. These winds influence travel, direction, and speed. Headwinds slow camels and increase their energy expenditure, while crosswinds can destabilize loads. During certain seasons, dust storms form quickly, reducing visibility and forcing caravans to stop until the air clears. Travelers often describe the sound of wind across grass, constant hum that rises and falls but never truly disappears. Guides learn to read these patterns, predicting when storms might form or when calmer intervals will allow safer movement. Mountain regions introduce their own set of challenges. The Tian, Shan, Pamirs, and Hindu Kush ranges contain high passes that remain key strategic points for Silk Road travel. These passes open only during certain months. In late spring, melting snow causes rivers to swell, making crossings difficult. Trails become muddy, unstable, and prone to landslides. Caravans must wait until the ground dries enough to support animals and loads. In summer, temperatures at lower altitudes increase, but high passes still experience sudden storms. Snowfall can occur even in warmer months, reminding travelers of the constant unpredictability of mountain weather. Autumn often becomes the preferred season for long-distance travel. Temperatures moderate, storms become less frequent, and foliage near mountain routes provides limited but valuable grazing. The air is cooler, reducing the risk of heat exhaustion, and the ground is dry enough to maintain stable paths. Many caravans time their departures to take advantage of these conditions, aiming to cross mountains before winter returns. The predictability of autumn contributes significantly to the efficiency of long-distance trade. Rain patterns also play a role. In regions influenced by monsoon cycles, such as the edges of the Indian subcontinent, seasonal rains determine when caravans can cross river valleys or highland routes. Heavy rains transform paths into mud, slow movement, and create hazards around cliffs or narrow trails. Travelers avoid certain passes during monsoon months, choosing alternative routes that remain more stable. Even in arid regions, rare storms can create flash floods, filling dry riverbeds with sudden, dangerous currents. Guides teach caravans to avoid camping in these depressions, even when they appear safe. Dust is another constant challenge. Across deserts and plains, fine particles settle on goods, animals, and travelers. Dust irritates eyes and lungs, complicates breathing during long walks, and infiltrates containers if not sealed properly. Merchants must wrap sensitive goods tightly, and handlers often cover their faces with cloth to reduce exposure. When winds rise, the air thickens with sand, and caravans may need to stop until conditions improve. In some regions, ancient travelers described black storms, intense dust events that darken the sky and disrupt travel for hours or days. Humidity also influences logistics. In oases and river valleys, moisture softens leather straps, weakens rope fibers, and encourages mold on food supplies. Travelers regularly inspect equipment in humid conditions, tightening knots or drying materials near controlled fires. Goods such as spices or textiles must be stored carefully to avoid absorbing excess moisture. Climate affects not only travel speed but the condition of everything a caravan carries. Visibility shifts continually with weather patterns. Fog forms in high valleys. Snow reduces the contrast between land and sky, and haze along desert horizons makes distant features appear closer or farther than they are. Navigation depends on the ability to interpret these effects. Guides learn to identify reliable shapes, mountain silhouettes, river bends, ancient walls of An, when atmospheric conditions obscure them. Environmental hazards also include wildlife. In certain regions, wolves or wild dogs may approach camps at night, drawn by the smell of food. Handlers keep animals close and maintain small fires to discourage predators. In desert regions, travelers remain alert for snakes or scorpions hiding in shade during the day. These encounters are not common but must be prepared for, especially when stopping near rocks or shrubs. Despite these challenges, Silk Road caravans develop a practical approach. They adjust pace according to weather, modify routes when seasons shift, and plan supplies based on expected conditions. This adaptability forms part of the system's strength. Rather than resisting the environment, caravans align themselves with the patterns of nature. They slow down when terrain demands caution, travel early when heat becomes dangerous, and wait patiently during storms. The Silk Road is not a path of constant hardship, but a route shaped by natural rhythms. Travelers learn to read the behavior of clouds, the angle of sunlight on dunes, the feel of wind through narrow valleys, and the hardness of ground beneath their feet. These observations, passed from guide to guide, create a body of knowledge that sustains trade across centuries. In this steady relationship between people and environment, caravans find a workable balance. The weather cannot be controlled, but it can be understood. Seasons cannot be changed, but they can be respected. And through this patient, practical approach, goods continue moving across continents guided by the calm logic of the natural world. As caravans move across the Silk Road, they pass not only through deserts, mountains, and open plains, but also through territories governed by different states, principalities, and local powers. These crossings introduce another layer of logistics: communication with officials, payment of taxes, verification of goods, and adherence to regional rules. While these interactions seldom involve dramatic confrontation, they shape the rhythm of travel just as much as climate and terrain. Each border, whether formal or informal, requires a series of practical steps that ensure safe passage and maintain the flow of trade across long distances. Throughout its history, the Silk Road spans regions controlled by empires such as the Han, Tebse, and Ming dynasties in China, the Kushan Empire, the Parthians and Sasanians in Persia, the Turkic Khonites, and many smaller kingdoms. Even in periods without a single dominant power, smaller polities managed key passes, oasis towns, and river crossings. Each authority enforces its own regulations, though certain patterns appear consistently across centuries. Approaching a border, caravans slow their pace. Unlike open stretches of road, borders tend to concentrate activity. Officials, guards, translators, and clerks work in small stations or fortified posts. These structures vary in size. Some consist of a simple gate with a small office, while others form part of larger administrative centers with walls, watchtowers, and barracks. Regardless of scale, their purpose is the same: to oversee movement and maintain stability. The first task upon arrival is registration. Caravan leaders present documents or verbal records listing the number of animals, types of goods, and their intended destinations. In many periods, merchants carry tally sticks, written permits, or seals granted by previous authorities. Border officials compare these with their own logs, ensuring that goods match declared quantities. This process aims to detect smuggling, verify tax obligations, and maintain accurate movement records. Language differences often require interpreters, especially in regions where cultural boundaries meet. These interpreters serve as intermediaries, translating the caravans' declarations and explaining local regulations. Their presence ensures clarity and reduces the risk of misunderstandings that might delay travel or lead to penalties. Taxes at borders come in different forms. Some states impose transit duties fees, calculated based on weight, volume, or type of goods. Silk, valuable metalware, spices, and precious stones often carry higher rates due to their demand and profitability. Other states require flat fees per animal or per caravan. These payments contribute to the upkeep of roads, border posts, and regional security forces, though the exact use of funds depends on the administration. Officials may inspect goods directly. They open bundles of textiles, examine metal objects, and weigh certain items using standard measures kept at the border station. These inspection procedures prevent fraud and ensure consistent taxation. While time-consuming, they become routine for merchants familiar with long-distance trade. Experienced travelers pack their goods in ways that allow quick opening and repacking, reducing delays at checkpoints. Beyond taxation, authorities enforce regulations concerning movement. Some regions limit the number of armed guards allowed within their borders. Others require caravans to hire local escorts for safety along certain stretches. These escorts, often drawn from local military units or licensed groups of guards, possess knowledge of nearby terrain and potential threats. Their presence reduces the likelihood of attacks and provides officials with reassurance that caravans will adhere to established routes. In politically unstable regions, border officials offer updated information about safe and unsafe paths. Caravans rely on these reports, adjusting routes accordingly. When conflicts erupt between neighboring states, authorities may temporarily close certain passes, forcing travelers to detour around contested areas. These closures can extend the journey by weeks, but adherence to them is essential for safety. Some borders function as cultural thresholds as well as administrative ones. Entering or leaving a region may require adherence to local customs or legal expectations. For example, in areas influenced by Islamic law, certain goods such as alcohol or particular types of animal products may face restrictions. In other regions, merchants must observe protocols when addressing officials, presenting documentation, or paying duties. The atmosphere at border crossings is generally orderly. Although disputes may arise over taxation or documentation, the shared interest in maintaining trade encourages cooperation. Local economies benefit from steady caravan traffic, as merchants spend money on food, lodging, animal fodder, and transport services within nearby towns. Authorities recognize this value and often design regulations to support controlled, predictable trade rather than hinder it. Time spent at borders varies. A small caravan with straightforward documentation may pass within a few hours. Larger caravans, especially those carrying mixed goods for multiple merchants, may require a full day or longer. During this time, handlers tend to animals, merchants prepare declarations, and support workers cook meals or fetch water from nearby wells. The quiet routines observed within caravanserais continue at the border post, blending administrative tasks with everyday life. Once cleared, caravans receive proof of inspection written notes, stamped seals, or verbal authorization recorded by clerks. These serve as references at subsequent checkpoints. Caravans then proceed through the gate and continue along the designated path. Guards may accompany them for the next segment, or guides may take over once the group has passed beyond administrative watch. Border crossings also shape the economic character of the Silk Road. Duties collected contribute to state revenue, supporting roads, fortified posts, and sometimes the construction of wells or rest stations. Stable policies encourage more merchants to travel, fostering links between distant markets. Conversely, high taxes or inconsistent enforcement can divert caravans toward alternative routes, shifting economic activity across regions. The presence of borders does not interrupt the continuity of the Silk Road. Instead, it structures the movement of people and goods. Administrative checkpoints, though practical in purpose, become part of the rhythm of long-distance travel. They mark transitions between environments, legal systems, and cultural spheres. Merchants learn to navigate these transitions with the same steady attention they give to weather, terrain, and supplies. Across centuries, The relationship between caravans and local authorities remains mutually dependent. Officials rely on merchants for revenue and regional prosperity. Merchants rely on authorities for safe passage and reliable conditions. Ts balance, maintained through routine exchanges at border crossings, contributes silently but significantly to the endurance of Silk Road commerce. Security is a constant concern along the Silk Road. Although many stretches of the route pass through peaceful regions where trade flows, others cross remote landscapes where authority is limited and travel becomes vulnerable. The threat is not always dramatic, but it is persistent. Bandits, small raiding groups, and opportunistic thieves create risks that caravans must manage with steady caution. The systems of protection developed over centuries reveal how practical planning, local cooperation, and routine vigilance keep long-distance trade functioning across thousands of kilometers. Caravans begin planning for security long before departure. Leaders determined how many guards to hire, which routes offer greater safety, and whether to join with other caravans to form larger groups. Traveling in numbers reduces the likelihood of attack. Bandits rarely approach large caravans unless they see clear advantage, preferring isolated travelers or small groups moving without protection. For this reason, merchants sometimes wait in towns or caravanserais until enough fellow travelers gather to form a safer convoy. The guards themselves typically come from local communities familiar with nearby terrain. Their knowledge extends beyond combat skills. They understand where narrow passes allow ambushes, where vegetation or dunes provide concealment, and which stretches of road have recently seen trouble. Their experience shapes the caravan's daily decisions. Guards advise when to start early, when to delay departure, or when to shift to a parallel path that avoids potential danger. Weapons carried by guards vary with region and period. Swords, spears, bows, and later firearms appear along different sections of the Silk Road. However, the emphasis is on deterrence rather than combat. A well-organized caravan with visible guards sends a clear signal. Attacking it will be costly. Bandits often reconsidered when faced with disciplined protection and difficult odds. Even simple displays organize formation, alert watchmen, or controlled movement help establish confidence within the caravan and caution among potential attackers. In desert regions, visibility plays an important role. The wide horizon allows guards to detect movement from afar, identifying whether approaching figures are harmless travelers, local herders, or potential threats. The stillness of desert air carries sound across long distances. Even small disturbances can alert guards to activity. At night, fires are positioned strategically to reduce visibility from the open plain, while still providing enough light for essential tasks. Mountain regions require different strategies. Narrow paths, sharp turns, and limited sight lines create opportunities for ambush. Guards walk ahead of the caravan, checking bends and slopes before animals approach. In some areas, local authorities maintain watchtowers or patrols that monitor movement along key passes. These structures provide additional safety, though their presence depends on political stability and regional resources. In steppe zones, danger comes less from terrain and more from mobility. Certain nomadic groups, especially during periods of political fragmentation, may engage in raiding. Their horses allow swift movement across open plains. Caravans respond by forming tight formations at night and setting rotating watches. Guard dogs sometimes join caravans, offering early warning through their senses and instinctive reactions to unfamiliar movement. Local authorities also play an important role in maintaining security. States with organized administrations often assign troops to patrol major routes. These soldiers deter banditry and ensure that trade remains steady, which benefits regional economies. Some states issue official travel documents or seals that guarantee protection. Merchants carrying these documents can expect assistance at checkpoints or military posts, where soldiers may accompany them through dangerous stretches. In regions controlled by smaller powers or tribal confederations, protection takes different forms. Caravans may negotiate safe passage through payments or agreements with local leaders. These arrangements, recorded verbally or with simple tokens, ensure that the caravan can move through the territory without harassment. In return, local communities benefit from trade, access to goods, and stable relations with merchants. Such agreements reflect the practical nature of Silk Road logistics. Cooperation often proves more effective than conflict. Nighttime security remains one of the most important routines. After reaching a camp or caravanserais, guards establish watch rotations. The number of guards on duty depends on the location. In safe areas, 1 or 2 may stay awake. In regions known for danger, several guards walk the perimeter, listening for movement and checking that animals remain calm. Camels typically react to nearby presence. Their low vocalizations or sudden movements, alerting handlers before guards even see the cause. Lighting is controlled carefully. Fires are kept low or placed behind walls to prevent revealing the caravan's position. Lanterns used for inspection are shielded by metal casings or cloth to direct light downward. These habits preserve night vision and reduce the risk of attracting unwanted attention. Noise is minimized. Conversations remain quiet, and tools are handled gently to avoid metallic sounds that travel far in the still night air. The design of caravanserais contributes to security as well. Thick walls protect travelers from raids, and a single gate allows controlled entry. Gates are closed at night, often reinforced with wooden beams or iron fittings. Guards stationed at the entrance verify arrivals, refuse entry to suspicious groups, and ensure that everyone inside remains safe. Even when a caravanserai offers simple facilities, its enclosed structure provides a barrier far stronger than open camps along unprotected stretches of road. Despite these precautions, incidents still occur. Bandit attacks, though not constant, leave enough impact that merchants treat security with seriousness. Reports of trouble travel quickly across stations, allowing caravans to adjust. When an incident occurs in a particular route, caravans may shift to an alternate path, delaying travel but reducing risk. This adaptability protects goods and lives while maintaining the trust needed for long-distance trade. The routines of security blend seamlessly into daily travel. There are no dramatic displays, only careful observation, steady coordination, and practical decisions. Guards communicate quietly with guides, handlers respond without hesitation, and merchants remain attentive to changes in the environment. These combined efforts create a shield around the caravan that moves with it, adapting to each landscape. Across centuries, the balance between threat and protection remains stable enough for trade to flourish. The Silk Road endures not because danger is absent, but because systems exist to manage it. These systems guards, patrols, agreements, fortified stations, and practical routines form an overlooked but essential layer of the route's infrastructure. Through deserts, mountains, and plains, security becomes a daily discipline, allowing caravans to continue their slow, steady movement across one of the most expansive trade networks in history. Along the Silk Road, goods travel great distances, but information travels even farther. Knowledge moves with caravans quietly, steadily, and often more quickly than physical objects. Although ancient states developed their own systems of messengers and officials, the most reliable communication network across Central Asia emerges through the routine interactions of merchants, guides, caravanserai keepers, and travelers who meet in shared spaces along the route. This flow of information becomes one of the Silk Road's most essential forms of infrastructure, shaping decisions, protecting travelers, and connecting distant societies long before modern communication. Information begins at These rest stations, spaced a day's journey apart, function not only as safe lodging but as hubs of conversation. When caravans arrive, merchants settle their animals, unload goods, and gather near fire pits or shaded arcades. Here, they exchange practical updates. Road conditions, recent storms, availability of water, tax requirements at border posts, and rumors of bandit activity. No official announcement is needed. The information circulates naturally through conversation. A caravan traveling east learns about a flash flood that damaged a bridge in the west. A group heading north hears about a newly opened pass that shortens the journey. In this way, knowledge spreads gradually but consistently. Guides contribute significantly to this exchange. Their understanding of terrain includes not only physical details, but also shifting circumstances. New wells opened by local communities, seasonal grazing patterns, and temporary closures of mountain passes. When guides meet one another at rest stations, they compare notes and update their internal maps. These interactions strengthen the collective knowledge that caravans rely upon. Although each guide works independently, Their shared observations form a loosely connected communication system. Local authorities also participate in this flow of information. At border posts or tax stations, officials inform caravans about recent policy changes, safe routes, and potential hazards. Sometimes these messages come from higher administrations seeking to keep trade predictable. In other cases, they reflect local concerns, such as increased raiding activity or the need to reroute traffic away from a damaged pass. Because trade brings revenue, officials generally aim to keep merchants well informed. Their updates help maintain order and reduce accidents along heavily traveled routes. Merchants function as carriers of distant news. Those who specialize in long-distance trade may take months to travel from one region to another. Along the way, they absorb information from countless local communities. When they arrive at new destinations, they share what they have learned. A merchant arriving in Samarkand from Kashgar may bring reports of crop failures, new markets, or changing political conditions in Eastern Central Asia. Another traveling from Herat to Dun may carry knowledge about price fluctuations in Persian markets or new products appearing in Indian ports. These exchanges influence economic decisions. Traders adjust their inventories based on demand, choose new destinations, or avoid regions facing instability. Languages play an important role in communication. Along the Silk Road, multilingualism becomes common, especially among merchants and interpreters. Sogdian, Persian, Turkic languages, Chinese, and later Arabic serve as key languages of trade. Interpreters at caravanserais markets and border posts bridge linguistic gaps, allowing information to move freely between groups. Their translations help prevent misunderstandings, especially when dealing with taxes, legal matters, or route instructions. Multilingual traders develop reputations for reliability because they can communicate clearly with diverse partners. Religious communities also contribute to information networks. Buddhist monks traveling between Central Asia and China carry texts, teachings, and practical knowledge about safe monasteries or hospitable settlements along their routes. Nestorian Christian communities spread across Persia and Central Asia maintain contact through shared faith and regular correspondence. Islamic scholars and students travel among cities and madrasas, exchanging religious, scientific, and geographic knowledge. These networks, though formed for spiritual or educational purposes, enhance the movement of information across vast distances. Markets act as another concentration point of communication. When caravans reach major urban centers such as Bukhara, Merv, Kashgar, or Shiante, enter environments filled with traders from many regions. Crowded markets host conversations in multiple languages, allowing information to spread quickly. Here, merchants learn about political developments affecting taxation, new trade agreements between states, and the outcomes of conflicts that may disrupt travel. News about distant events can influence decisions for months or even years. A report of trouble along a particular pass might shift traffic patterns across an entire region. Communication technology itself remains simple but effective. Messages travel by word of mouth, carried by travelers who repeat information they have verified. Letters appear in some regions, sealed with official stamps or written on paper, silk, or wooden tablets. Couriers carry these documents on horseback for local rulers or wealthy merchants. Such written communication is more reliable for official matters, though it travels more slowly than informal conversation among caravans. Still, letters contribute to the broader flow of information, especially concerning administrative policies, agreements, or major events. Distance does not prevent knowledge from spreading. It simply slows the process, giving information a layered quality. A caravan may arrive in a town carrying news that is several weeks old, yet it remains valuable. Merchants and local residents integrate new information with older reports, creating a patchwork understanding of distant regions. Over time, this creates a broad, interconnected awareness of conditions across the Silk Road. Even without centralized communication systems, information also moves through visual observation. Travelers share details about the condition of roads, the behavior of rivers, and the presence of new settlements. They describe changes in vegetation, snow lines, or animal migration patterns, natural indicators of seasonal shifts that affect travel. These observations help caravans prepare for upcoming stretches. A guide who has just crossed a mountain pass may warn others about lingering ice on the northern slope. Another who traveled a desert route may note that a particular well has weakened, prompting caravans to carry extra water. Trust shapes the value of information. Merchants rely on sources known for accuracy, whether individuals, communities, or stations. Some caravanserais keepers develop reputations for well-informed guidance, attracting travelers who seek reliable updates. Merchants learn which rumors to treat with caution and which reports to act upon. Over time, these patterns of trust create informal but effective communication channels. Despite its informal nature, this network connects continents. Knowledge from the Mediterranean eventually reaches China. Reports from the Indian subcontinent traveled north into Central Asia. The flow is not continuous or perfectly accurate, but it is steady enough to shape trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. The Silk Road becomes not only a corridor of physical goods, but a bridge of information that binds distant regions into a loose but meaningful relationship. Across deserts and mountains, through caravanserais and marketplaces, this quiet system of communication helps maintain stability and predictability. It allows caravans to adjust routes, anticipate challenges, and make informed decisions. The movement of information, though invisible in physical form, sustains the very structure of the Silk Road. The Silk Road is named for one product, but its reality is far more complex. Silk is only one thread in a vast tapestry of goods that move slowly across deserts, mountains, and plains. Each item that appears on a camel's back, whether light or heavy, rare or common, travels for a reason. Some goods circulate because they are valuable, others because they are useful, and many because societies separated by long distances develop complementary needs. Understanding what caravans carry reveals not only economic patterns, but also cultural preferences, technologies, and the ways distant regions become quietly connected. Silk remains one of the most iconic goods. Produced in China through labor-intensive techniques of sericulture, it becomes highly valued across Central Asia, Persia, and the Mediterranean. Its softness, strength, and sheen make it desirable for clothing, ceremonial banners, and diplomatic gifts. Silk is light but valuable, ideal for long-distance transport. For centuries, Chinese states regulate its production and distribution, using it as payment for border defense, trade agreements, and alliances. As silk moves west through caravan networks, it often changes form. Some merchants trade raw silk for finished textiles. Others re-export woven cloth to distant markets where it commands high prices. Spices also travel great distances. Pepper from India, cinnamon from Sri Lanka, and aromatic resins from Arabia move along interconnected routes towards Central Asian cities. These spices serve culinary, medicinal, and religious purposes. Their high value and compact size make them suited to transport across challenging terrain. Spices become part of local markets along the Silk Road, influencing diets and medical practices far from their places of origin. Metals and metalware form another important category. Bronze vessels, iron tools, silver ornaments, and gold jewelry circulate widely. Some metals travel in raw form ingots or unprocessed lumps, while others appear as finished objects. Metal goods move not only for their economic worth, but also for their utility. Tools such as knives, axes, and needles support daily life. Decorative metal items serve social and ceremonial functions. In certain periods, Central Asian metalworking traditions influenced Chinese designs, demonstrating the subtle but persistent exchange of technology through trade. Glassware offers a striking example of East-West interaction. Glass objects produced in the Mediterranean and Persian regions reach China, where they are valued for clarity and craftsmanship. Chinese glass and lacquerware also travel west, introducing different techniques and artistic styles. Archaeological finds reveal Roman glass beads in Central Asian tombs and Chinese lacquer objects in Middle Eastern sites, showing how even fragile goods move across great distances when carefully packed and handled. Paper becomes increasingly important after its invention in China. Originally used for writing, account keeping, and administrative work, paper spreads along the Silk Road as merchants and scholars adopt it. Its lightweight nature makes it easier to transport than earlier writing materials such as wooden tablets or parchment. The spread of paper technology influences record-keeping, education, and administration across Central Asia and the Islamic world. Foodstuffs also travel, though often in processed forms. Dried fruits, nuts, oils, and fermented products circulate between regions with different climates. Salt, essential for preservation and diet, appears as a trade good in arid regions where local supplies are limited. Tea travels from China in compressed cakes or bricks, allowing it to survive long journeys and remain a valuable commodity in markets across Central Asia. Animals themselves become trade goods. Horses from Central Asia, especially from the Fergana Valley, are exchanged for silk and other products. These horses are prized in China for speed and endurance, influencing military strategy and transport. Camels, though primarily working animals, are also traded in certain regions. Their ability to carry heavy loads and endure harsh conditions makes them important assets for merchants and local populations alike. Precious stones and minerals appear throughout Silk Road trade. Jade from western China, or the Kunlun Mountains, travels east toward Chinese imperial workshops. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan moves west, eventually reaching the Mediterranean world. Coral, pearls, and amber travel between coastal regions and inland markets, carried by merchants who link maritime and overland routes. These stones often hold ritual or symbolic meaning, making them highly valued across cultural boundaries. Textiles other than silk also play major roles. Woolen fabrics from Central Asian pastoral communities, cotton cloth from India, and finely woven carpets from Persian workshops move along interconnected pathways. These textiles reflect the climates and technologies of their places of origin. Wool provides warmth in colder environments. Cotton offers lightness and comfort. Carpets serve both functional and symbolic purposes in homes and public spaces. Alongside luxury goods, practical items circulate steadily. Needles, ceramics, saddles, rope, leather goods, and wooden tools appear in markets. Many of these objects do not attract the attention of kings or diplomats, but they shape daily life. A ceramic jar that breaks during travel may be replaced at an oasis market. A handler buys new rope, or a merchant acquires a better saddle frame. Such ordinary exchanges keep caravans functioning. The movement of religious objects contributes to cultural exchange. Buddhist statues, manuscripts, ritual items, and icons travel from India and Central Asia into China. Islamic texts and scientific instruments move across Persia and Central Asia. Christian communities exchange crosses, manuscripts, and liturgical items. These goods carry not only material value but also beliefs, contributing to the spread of religions and ideas across regions. Why these goods move relates to economic patterns. Regions specialize in certain products because of climate, natural resources, or technological traditions. Consumers in distant regions desire goods they cannot produce themselves. This combination generates trade, supported by the caravan system. Merchants profit by bridging these distances, transporting objects from areas of abundance to areas of demand. The diversity of goods also reflects the layered structure of the Silk Road. Not all items travel from one end of the route to the other. Many move only short distances from one oasis to the next, or from a mountain village to a nearby city. Local and regional exchanges blend into long-distance trade, creating a network rather than a single line. A piece of silk may change hands many times before reaching its final owner. A ceramic bowl may travel a few hundred kilometers, while pepper might cross continents. Each object, regardless of value, contributes to a larger pattern of movement and connection. Goods travel because people travel, and people travel because trade supports communities, economies, and states. The flow of materials across the Silk Road reveals a world linked not by sudden events, but by slow, steady exchange, a rhythm, shaped by need, opportunity, and geography. Along the Silk Road, trade is not an abstract system linking distant empires. It is a series of local economies, each shaped by its own landscape, resources, and traditions. These regional economies do not simply support long-distance caravans, they rely on them. Towns, farming villages, oasis communities, and pastoral groups all become part of a broad network in which goods, labor, and services circulate in steady rhythm. Understanding these local systems reveals how the Silk Road functions, not only as a corridor of exchange, but as a living framework in which communities adapt and specialize according to their oasis towns form the backbone of many central routes. These settlements appear where rivers descending from mountain ranges create fertile basins at the edges of deserts. Places like Turpan, Khoton, Dunhuang, and Kashgar support agriculture in otherwise arid environments. Farmers here grow grain, grapes, melons, and vegetables using irrigation channels carved into the earth. They also cultivate mulberry trees for silk production or raise animals suited to local conditions. These agricultural products feed both residents and travelers. Caravanserais rely on oasis supplies to refresh water skins, rest animals, and sell food to merchants. In turn, caravans bring goods that oasis towns cannot produce themselves, maintaining a steady exchange that shapes local markets. Mountain communities contribute different forms of specialization. In regions such as the Pamirs or Tian Shan, residents depend on pastoralism, raising sheep, goats, yaks, and sometimes horses. These animals provide wool, meat, hides, and transport. Wool textiles and felt mats, produced through traditional methods, become trade goods carried to neighboring valleys or further along the Silk Road. Mountain dwellers also guide caravans across high passes, offering expertise that outsiders cannot easily acquire. Their knowledge of seasonal weather patterns, safe trails, and grazing areas becomes a vital service in the broader network of exchange. Steppe communities, spread across Central Asia's vast grasslands, shape another key part of the system. Pastoral nomads move with their herds, producing meat, dairy products, and animal skins. They supply horses prized for speed and endurance, which Chinese states often seek in exchange for goods such as silk. Nomadic groups also provide wool, felt, and hides to urban markets. Their mobility allows them to act as intermediaries, linking regions separated by broad open plains. Although pastoralists do not build permanent markets, their movement connects distant settlements and contributes to cross-regional trade flows. Urban centers serve as major economic hubs. Cities like Samarkand, Bukhara, Merv Bauk, and Xi'an thrive by combining local production with long-distance commerce. Artisans in these cities craft metalware, ceramics, textiles, and luxury goods that attract merchants from many regions. Workshops specialize in techniques refined across generations. Intricate metal inlays, glazed pottery, carved woodwork, and fine carpets. The presence of skilled artisans transforms urban centers into destinations where caravans can sell high-value goods and acquire new ones. Local economies grow through markets, taxes, and services that support travelers. Certain regions become famous for specific products. Khotan, for example, is known for its jade, valued in Chinese imperial workshops. Fergana becomes renowned for its horses, sought after by Chinese rulers for military campaigns. Persia produces intricate textiles, metalware, and scientific instruments. India contributes spices, cotton cloth, and precious stones. Each region's specialization arises from its environment, labor systems, and cultural traditions. These patterns remain stable across long periods, creating predictable flows of trade. The presence of long-distance caravans influences local labor. Farmers, artisans, water carriers, and cooks often supplement their livelihoods by providing services to travelers. Caravanserais hire workers for maintenance, cleaning, cooking, and managing animals. Markets near major routes attract temporary stalls selling tools, textiles, pottery, and food. Many families rely on the steady income generated by passing caravans. Even small villages benefit from selling fodder, firewood, or simple household goods. Regional specialization also affects taxation and governance. States recognize the economic value of trade and adjust their policies to benefit from it. Some regions reduce taxes on certain goods to attract caravans. Others impose fees that fund local infrastructure. Administrators invest in wells, roads, and protective patrols to ensure that trade flows remain uninterrupted. These actions strengthen both local economies and the broader network of exchange. Cultural traditions shape local industries as well. In areas influenced by Buddhism, monasteries produce manuscripts, paintings, and ritual objects that become sought-after items. Islamic cities along the Silk Road contribute scientific texts, calligraphy tools, and architectural styles that spread with merchants and scholars. Christian and Zoroastrian communities produce distinct forms of art and metal, which enter markets alongside goods of other traditions. These cultural products highlight how religion and craftsmanship intertwine in regional economies. Local demand shapes trade routes as much as distant markets do. A caravan carrying silk may sell part of its cargo long before reaching its final destination. Merchants calculate opportunities at each town, adjusting their loads according to local needs. If a region experiences a poor harvest, demand for grain increases. If artisans require raw materials such as dyes or metals, caravans supply them in exchange for finished goods. This dynamic exchange supports a web of regional interdependence. Seasonal cycles influence local production. In mountain regions, summer provides opportunities to produce wool, cheese, and meat for trade. In oasis towns, harvest seasons shape market activity and determine when surplus goods can be sold. Nomadic groups plan their movements according to grazing patterns, influencing the availability of animals and animal products. These seasonal rhythms align with the schedules of caravans, creating predictable windows when certain goods become available. Local economies do not remain static. Over centuries, changes in political power, climate, and technology reshape regional specialization. New irrigation systems expand agricultural zones. Shifts in dynasty or empire alter taxation policies. Climate fluctuations influence crop yields or grazing patterns. Despite these changes, the underlying structure of regional specialization endures, sustained by the natural resources and cultural traditions that define each region. These interconnected local economies transform the Silk Road into more than a trade route. They create a system in which distant regions benefit from each other's strengths. Desert oases provide water and food for travelers. Mountain villages offer guides and livestock. Steppe communities produce horses and animal goods. Urban centers generate crafted objects and administrative support. Each region contributes something distinct, and in doing so, becomes part of a broader world. Through this quiet, steady exchange, communities across Asia achieve a balance between independence and interdependence. Local specialization strengthens regional identity while simultaneously linking people separated by mountains, deserts, and vast distances. This pattern, repeated across centuries, sustains the Silk Road as a living system grounded in the daily needs, skills, and resources of diverse societies. Across the Silk Road, trade does more than move goods from one region to another. It brings people into contact in ways that gradually shape customs, art, language, and belief. A shared meal in a caravanserai, a translated manuscript, a decorative style adopted by an artisan. Each quiet moment contributes to a broader pattern of cultural connection. The Silk Road becomes not a single culture, but a space where many cultures meet, adapt, and learn from one another. One of the most visible forms of interaction appears in language, because merchants along the Silk Road speak many languages. Chinese, Sogdian, Persian, Turkic languages, Indian dialects, Arabic, and others. Interpreters become essential. Over time, certain languages develop into common trade languages. Sogdian becomes widely used across Central Asia for commercial exchange during the early medieval period. Persian later spreads across large parts of the route, serving as a language of administration and diplomacy. These shared languages do not replace local ones, but they create bridges between communities. Words from one language enter another, especially terms related to trade, religion, and material culture. In this way, merchants who meet briefly leave subtle linguistic traces behind. Religious traditions also move along the route. Buddhism spreads from India through Central Asia into China, carried by monks, pilgrims, and merchants. Along the way, it adapts to local cultures, absorbing artistic styles and philosophical ideas. Buddhist cave temples in Dunhuang Kucha and Bamiyan show influences from Indian, Iranian, and Central Asian artistic traditions. Christianity, particularly in its Nestorian form, appears across Persia and Central Asia, establishing communities in cities such as Merv and Zoroastrianism remains influential in Persian regions, contributing ritual practices and artistic motifs that travel with merchants. Islam spreads through Central Asia, beginning in the 7th century of the Common Era, shaping new cultural and artistic interactions across the route. These religions do not compete for dominance along the Silk Road so much as coexist, each finding space within the diverse environments of towns and caravans. Travelers encounter temples, mosques, churches, and shrines as they move, gaining familiarity with practices outside their own traditions. Manuscripts and religious texts circulate, translated into local languages by scholars who work at cultural crossroads. The movement of ideas becomes as steady as the movement of goods. Art reveals another layer of interaction. Decorative motifs travel across regions, carried in textiles, pottery, metalwork, and sculpture. An artisan in Central Asia may adopt a floral pattern seen on Chinese silk. A workshop in northern India might incorporate Central Asian animal motifs into its carvings. Ceramic glazes developed in Persian cities influence Chinese pottery. Glass-making techniques move west and east, altering local styles. These exchanges are not abrupt. They occur gradually through exposure, admiration, and practical adaptation. Over time, they create objects that blend multiple influences, reflecting the quiet harmony of shared artistic knowledge. Music and performance also circulate along the route. Musicians traveling with caravans or attached to courts carry instruments, melodies, and rhythms between regions. Certain musical instruments, such as the lute, spread widely along the Silk Road, appearing in China, Central Asia, Persia, and the Mediterranean world. Although these instruments change in form and technique, their shared origins reveal deep historical connections. Court performances in China during the Thames dynasty feature dancers and musicians from Central Asia, demonstrating the integration of artistic traditions into elite culture. Culinary exchange emerges in a similar way. Spices, grains, and cooking methods introduce new flavors to distant regions. Dumpling-like foods appear in China and Central Asia with variations that reflect local ingredients. Noodles travel westward, while breads and dairy traditions move east. Tea spreads from China into Central Asia, where it becomes part of daily life in caravanserais and homes. These culinary changes arise not from deliberate campaigns, but from the simple practice of travelers sharing meals and ingredients with one another. Shared knowledge extends to science, medicine, and technology. Astronomical observations recorded in Persia influence scholars in China. Mathematical techniques from India travel westward, carried by scholars who move between courts and learning centers. Medical knowledge circulates in manuscripts, oral teachings, and practical demonstrations. Herbal remedies from one region appear in the medical texts of another. Caravanserais and urban centers become places where scholars gather to discuss ideas, expanding the intellectual landscape of the Silk Road. Even clothing reflects cultural blending. Styles adapted for travel: layered garments, wide belts. Patterned textiles appear across regions with variations suited to climate and tradition. Silk robes, worn by Central Asian elites, incorporate Persian motifs. Chinese artisans adopt cuts influenced by nomadic clothing for ease of movement. Merchants rely on predictable hospitality in unfamiliar regions, strengthening connections between hosts and guests. Despite extensive interaction, cultures along the Silk Road do not lose their distinct identities. Instead, they maintain local traditions while adopting useful or admired elements from others. Cities along the route become mosaics of influence. Chinese architecture with Central Asian fresco styles, Persian textiles with Indian dyes, and Central Asian palaces decorated with designs inspired by multiple traditions. These blended forms do not erase boundaries, but demonstrate the slow, steady integration of diverse ideas. The movement of people reinforces this cultural mix. Artisans migrate to serve foreign courts. Scholars travel to study in distant learning centers, and merchants settle for extended periods in cities far from home. Their presence introduces local communities to new skills, stories, and practices. yet they also adapt to the customs of the places where they live, creating hybrid forms of culture that endure across generations. Through these quiet interactions, the Silk Road becomes more than a trade route. It becomes a zone of shared human experience, shaped not by conquest or conflict, but by the ordinary movement of people doing practical work, selling goods, sharing meals, exchanging ideas, and learning from one another. The Silk Road endures in history not only because of the goods that moved across it, but because of the logistical systems that made such movement possible. These systems: caravan organization, water management, route planning, security networks, and cultural exchange form the quiet backbone of long-distance trade. Their influence stretches far beyond the periods in which caravans regularly crossed Central Asia. They shape economic patterns, political strategies, technological development, and cultural exchanges that continue long after the last major caravans complete their journeys. One of the most enduring legacies is the establishment of stable trade corridors. Over centuries, caravans follow roughly the same valleys, mountain passages, and desert edges. These routes become deeply embedded in regional geographies. Settlements grow at strategic points where water, shelter, and pasture are available. Caravanserais appear at intervals that later travelers, administrators, and even modern road planners continue to follow. The logic of these routes, based on practical knowledge of terrain and climate, remains relevant long after the Silk Road's peak. Many modern highways and railways in Central Asia trace the same general pathways established by ancient caravans. Economic specialization along the Silk Road continues to influence regional economies. Towns that once supplied caravans evolve into centers of agriculture, crafts, and trade. Mountain communities maintain pastoral traditions that shaped Silk Road logistics for centuries. Urban centers such as Samarkand, Kashgar, and Xi'an preserve their roles as commercial and cultural hubs. Even when the volume of long-distance trade decreases due to maritime routes or political changes, the economic structures that grew around the Silk Road remain resilient. Markets, craft traditions, and service industries adapt to new circumstances while retaining patterns established in earlier eras. The exchange of technologies represents another long-term legacy. Systems of irrigation developed in oasis towns spread to neighboring regions. Techniques for textile production, metalworking, pottery, and glassmaking travel with artisans and merchants. The spread of paper from China into Central Asia and the Islamic world reshapes administration, education, and communication. The movement of scientific instruments and treatises facilitates advancements in astronomy, mathematics, and medicine across Eurasia. These transfers occur quietly but steadily, integrated into everyday life through use and adaptation. Political relations between states are shaped by Silk Road logistics as well. Empires recognize the value of controlling strategic points: mountain passes, oasis towns, or fertile valleys. Diplomatic agreements often revolve around access to these routes, protection of merchants, and regulation of trade. Even in periods when conflicts disrupt the Silk Road, states understand that stable trade benefits both sides. This recognition encourages cooperation, treaties, and the establishment of institutions that protect travelers. Such practices contribute to broader frameworks of diplomacy across Eurasia. Cultural connections form perhaps the most visible legacy. The exchange of ideas, artistic motifs, religious practices, and languages transform societies along the Silk Road. Buddhist, Islamic, Christian, and other religious traditions spread not through conquest alone but through the daily routines of travelers and teachers. Artistic forms blend across regions, creating hybrid styles seen in pottery, murals, textiles, and architecture. These cultural exchanges persist, visible in the heritage of Central Asian cities and in the shared traditions of communities separated by great distances. The logistical knowledge of the Silk Road also shapes later trade routes. Caravans in the Islamic world, the Mongol Empire, and early modern Central Asia continue to use methods refined over centuries. The Mongol Empire, in particular, expands and formalizes these systems. Under Mongol rule, relay stations, postal riders, and administrative protections create an environment in which goods and information travel more efficiently than before. These developments reflect principles already present along the Silk Road: careful planning, coordinated movement, and reliance on shared infrastructure. Environmental adaptation forms another lasting legacy. The deep understanding of deserts, mountains, and steppe environments developed through Silk Road travel influences how later generations manage these landscapes. Knowledge about water sources, seasonal weather patterns, and animal behavior passes through communities for centuries. Even as modern technology replaces caravans, this knowledge remains relevant for agriculture, settlement planning, and environmental stewardship. Perhaps the most enduring legacy lies in the mindset created by long-distance interaction. The Silk Road fosters a worldview in which distant regions are understood not as isolated, but as parts of a larger connected system. Merchants, artisans, scholars, and travelers become accustomed to diversity, multilingualism, and negotiation. These habits shape social expectations and cultural openness. The idea that goods, ideas, and people can move across continents becomes normal, a quiet foundation for later global exchanges. Although maritime trade eventually surpasses overland routes, the Silk Road does not disappear suddenly. It adjusts. Local trade continues between neighboring regions. Pilgrims travel to sacred sites. Small caravans carry goods across mountain passes. The infrastructure remains in use, even if the long transcontinental journeys become less frequent. The legacy of Silk Road logistics lives on in these everyday movements. Modern scholarship, archaeology, and cultural preservation efforts highlight the importance of these ancient systems. Excavations reveal caravanserais pottery, textiles, and tools that demonstrate the practical organization behind the Silk Road. Manuscripts and administrative records show how merchants calculated distances, managed supplies, and navigated political boundaries. These discoveries reinforce the understanding that the Silk Road's success rests not on dramatic events, but on the slow, consistent work of countless travelers. The Silk Road's logistical legacy also influences contemporary identity. Countries across Central Asia, China, the Middle East, and beyond recognize the route as part of their historical heritage. Restoration projects revive ancient sites. Museums and educational programs explore Silk Road cultures. This shared history strengthens connections between modern states that once participated in Silk Road trade, creating new opportunities for cooperation in transportation, culture, and tourism. Ultimately, the Silk Road's most significant legacy is continuity. The systems developed to support caravans practical, flexible, and grounded in understanding of the natural world demonstrate how human societies adapt to their environments and to one another. Through slow, steady movement of goods and ideas, the Silk Road helped shape civilizations across Eurasia. Its influence endures not because of a single moment, but because of accumulated habits, shared knowledge, and repeated actions over centuries. The Silk Road endures as one of history's most significant networks of exchange, not because of a single empire or a brief moment of prosperity, but because of a long sequence of practical systems that supported movement across thousands of kilometers. Over centuries, caravans rely on careful planning, predictable rhythms, and shared knowledge. They follow routes shaped by terrain, water sources, and seasonal patterns. They depend on caravanserais, border stations, local economies, and guides who understand the environment with quiet precision. Through these routines, the Silk Road becomes a stable framework linking distant regions of Eurasia. The goods that travel along these routes spices, metals, textiles, ceramics, and manuscripts reflect the varied environments and specialized labor of many communities. Each region contributes something distinct, creating economic interdependence that sustains trade even as political boundaries change. At the same time, cultural traditions move with equal steadiness. Religious teachings, artistic motifs, scientific knowledge, and linguistic influences pass from one settlement to another, shaping societies far removed from their points of origin. These cultural exchanges do not override local identities. Instead, they blend gradually into new forms rooted in both tradition and adaptation. The legacy of the Silk Road persists in the landscapes it shaped, the cities that grew along its routes, and the technologies and ideas that traveled across it. Modern roads, railways, and communication networks often follow the same natural corridors once used by caravans. The memory of long-distance interaction remains embedded in regional histories, revealing how deeply connected Eurasia has been through practical cooperation and continuous movement. The Silk Road shows that global exchange develops not through sudden events, but through repeated actions, careful loading of goods, steady steps of animals, shared meals in caravanserais, and the quiet passing of information across generations. In these accumulated moments, a vast network takes shape, leaving a legacy that endures long after the last caravan reaches its destination.